Hello, everyone, and welcome to the RCLICK Microsoft Zero Trust Digital Summit, Predicting the Unpredictable. My name is Isabel Thiessen, and I'm the Marketing Administrator here at RCLICK. I will be the host for today's webinar. Before I turn things over to our speakers, I wanted to set the scene a little bit and provide some context. RCLICK has been in business since 1997, providing enterprise-grade IT services and cybersecurity to organizations throughout California. RCLICK has partnered with Microsoft for over 25 years. Our solutions deliver value and results to our clients, allowing them to get ahead of the competition and achieve greater success. Here's a look at today's agenda. These are the talking points we will cover. Zero Trust Trends and Insights. We will have a fireside chat about Zero Trust for the modern workplace. We will cover 3 Zero Trust principles. We will talk about a customer case study, and we will talk about RCLICK's keys to success and a Zero Trust rollout checklist. And then we'll have a Q&A at the end of the session. Our first speaker today is Jim Harrington. Jim is the co-CEO here at RCLICK. Jim is going to share his perspective on things we're seeing in the workplace and why Zero Trust is relevant.
Hey, Isabel, thanks a lot. Thank you everyone for joining. We're really looking forward to sharing some practical ways to implement Zero Trust principles in your organization. When we go through this talk, you'll probably see that you have a lot of these principles already in place, a lot of this due to the COVID pandemic. We're going to go more back to the definition about why Zero Trust came, how it's really turned the old castle and moat security model, which was a perimeter security model, on its head. Our legacy security model is based on having safe zones where you'll have a really strong firewall, high security at your office. And then it's assumed when you're in your office, oh, everything's safe, like when you're inside the office. And then outside the office are the threats. Where nowadays it's a little different, like we're accessing cloud systems and we're not always working in the office. So we're going to have a Zero Trust. We're not going to assume there's safe zones. We're going to assume there's an adversary, and we want to limit what they can do. We're going to talk about how you can evaluate your company's security posture. Now, almost every existing company is going to have this legacy architecture, this castle and moat. Doesn't mean when you do Zero Trust, you have to remove that. That's still appropriate to have in your office. These technologies are going to operate hand in hand. Most of our clients that we see operate very lean. There's not unlimited resources to work on security. And the great thing about using a Zero Trust model is it really relies on a lot of cloud platforms, especially when working with a company like Microsoft. The great thing about Microsoft is their Zero Trust solutions are very accessible and they're not high cost. And what's it able us to do as an IT organization is it enables us to focus on larger projects without having to constantly maintain on-site legacy security systems. This really helps everyone be productive and move faster, get new technologies out there. This Zero Trust that we're going to talk about, it's about strongly identifying. It's going to be about identifying your users, really knowing that it's your user. We know nowadays people are always trying to, your adversary is trying to pretend they're someone else, trying to steal someone's credentials. We really want to understand that this is the correct user and they're getting access to the right data. With that all said, we have a really great guest speaker today, Shubham from Microsoft. I'm glad he's here with us. I'd like to turn this over to Roy and Shubham for a nice fireside chat.
So thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. As Jim mentioned, that we're going to have a fireside chat today between myself and Shubham Kumar. He is the partner strategy lead for modern workplace and security at Microsoft. I'm Roy McRae. I'm the business development manager here at RCLICK. And we're looking forward to kind of diving into a little bit better understanding of why Zero Trust and why it's important in the modern workplace. So that's kind of the first question, Shabam. What is zero trust and why is it important?
No, thanks, Troy, and super excited to be here. Thanks to Jim as well for setting such a wonderful stage today to talk about zero trust. So, um, I love this question and really starting on zero trust 101, what it is and why it's important. So, I think the first thing which zero trust brings in is, as Jim highlighted, we have really moved away from traditional security approaches such as perimeter-based security. And what zero trust inherently believes is it assumes that all the actors, both inside and outside of an organization, are untrusted by default. And it looks at verifying their identities and activities before granting them access to resources. So, really, that belief that treating every user, whether they're inside the network or outside, and untrusting them by default really brings that additional layer of trust in the whole environment and network. Now, why it's important? We all know the disruption we saw with respect to us being able to work from any place, any location, and any device. So, in any modern workplace environment, the first key need for a CIO is to reduce the risk of data breaches, cyber attacks, as well as other threats. And zero trust framework allows to do that by enabling strict access controls, ability to monitor user behaviors, as well as encrypting data in transit and at rest. So, what I really believe and like about this framework, why it's important, is it believes in providing just in time as well as just in access, which is every user needs to be untrusted and have to verify their identities every single time and on the go also. So that's why I believe it's super powerful and super crucial in today's time, especially when cybersecurity threats are increasing at a rapid pace.
Thank you, Shabam. So, in addition to that, how does zero trust differ from traditional security approaches, and what are some of the key principles?
That's a great one. And I'll again build up on what Jim said earlier, which is moving from perimeter-based security, which is once a user is inside the network, it has kind of access to the resources. What zero trust differs on is it treats every access request as untrusted and requires authentication and authorization for all access attempts, regardless of the location, device, or network. So I think that's the core. And as the name also says, zero trust. So that's how it differs. Some of the key principles are number one, verifying the identity of user and devices, segmenting the network, using multi-cloud authentication, as well as implementing least privilege access controls and continuously monitoring user activity. So really, it's about making sure the right users and the right devices, making sure we have segmented our network so that people have least control privileges. And I think that whole thought process of instead of opening up the whole network, but rather providing users what they're looking for and bases their access control, that key principle really differentiates this framework compared to other security frameworks and architectures.
Great. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what's really important to a business owner and an organization, and that is kind of what are the challenges and benefits of implementing zero trust in their organization?
No, I think that's really the key for all the business owners and CIOs, which is how do we make this all real? And there are a bunch of challenges which we have seen in our experience at Microsoft as well as working with RCLICK. So I think the biggest challenge we have seen is having the right deployment and maintenance capabilities. And most of the times, those do not exist inside the organization. So that's where organization like RCLICK plays a big role. So that's number one, which is how do you deploy and maintain the necessary security technology around the zero trust implementation. The second one is we all have a set of legacy investments we have made. So how do you integrate with the complexity of your existing systems, this zero trust approach? And finally, the third one, which is most crucial, is how do you train your team, onboard them, and continuously educate and empower them so that they can take advantage of zero trust? Because all these benefits, which is whether reducing the risk of data breaches, improved visibility into network, or enhanced data privacy and security, also requires us to change the mindset and train our people in the organization. So three big challenges: cost of deploying and maintenance, complexity of integrating, and finally onboarding and educating our own teams so that they can take advantage of this evolved security paradigm and serve our customers well.
Okay. And in regarding a Microsoft partnership, what does that mean for an organization, and how can you leverage it by partnering with RightClick and Microsoft?
Yeah, so it's really an honor, the partnership we have with RightClick, and Jim, Roy, and the team are really grateful and honored to see this partnership mature as well as grow and help our customers achieve more. So I think what customers need today is they need a platform player which can provide them the right technology, and then they need a deployment partner like RightClick so that they can get the latest and most effective cybersecurity solutions. So the partnership between RightClick and Microsoft, it gives the best of both worlds and allows organizations to get advantage of RightClick's expertise in deploying security solutions with hundreds of customers, as well as Microsoft's proven technology solutions, where we invest cumulatively more than $10 billion annually in improving our security capabilities using AI and ML. I also do want to call out when we have seen some of our partners like RightClick and how they differentiate and are successful. There are three things which really stands out when I talk about RightClick. Number one is essentially the kind of team they have in place. So they focus a lot on customer success, and we have seen that in past as well with our wins. So they have a dedicated team with right balance of project management as well as technical engineers, and that becomes an extension of end customers organization team, which is so crucial because the cost of deploying and maintenance is one of the biggest challenge around zero trust and security. So number one is that dedicated highly intensive team. Number two is the elite boots on ground strategy they have, which is the kind of response time they have, the 24/7 network ops center, as well as a very meticulous purchasing team, which makes the process and the whole experience extremely smooth for customers. And all this coupled with a professional client services team and help desk as well, which is available 24/7 to help customers whenever they have any query or need any urgent support. So that's the second one. And final and third piece, I would say, apart from having the right technical intensive team as well as the boots on ground approach, is how they really think about the customers, which is really helping customers think of their business outcomes and goals and realizing them along with the IT goals which customers have. So that mindset really helps them differentiate out. And as I said before, really proud of this partnership and how we are growing and helping hundreds of customers win and secure themselves with more in the today's era.
Great. Thank you so much. That was a lot of nice things you said about RightClick. We really obviously love Microsoft and Azure. And regarding some of the real world examples and best practices with zero trust in action, how can organizations get started and start the implementation?
So I think the best practices for implementing zero trust really starts with doing an analysis of where we are. So any digital transformation or IT transformation really begins from starting, what's our current IT estate. So doing a risk assessment to determine the critical assets and data that need protection. I think that would be the first step, doing a security audit or assessment and seeing what your current infra is. I think that's the key. Once you have done that, I think a set of other things start, which is you start defining your access control policies, start looking at user privileges, as well as the data transfer, which is happening inside and outside the network, and finally reviewing and updating the policies as per your compliance and IT requirements. So really, the security assessment is where the whole thing starts. Some of the real world examples we have seen with customers is really starting with doing the micro segmentation of your users so that you can restrict the access. We have seen implementing MFA to verify the identity of users, and finally doing encryption to protect data in transit as well as rest. So those are some of the examples we have seen. But really, I would suggest that the first step is to start with the security audit. And I think RCLICK also has one which provides, in a very short time period, a complete analysis. So that's something which we have seen consistently, that start with audit and then start looking at what control policies you want to implement, how do you monitor your user activity, how do you monitor the data transfer, and kind of encryption you want to put in. But an audit would be a good start to for this journey.
Well, thank you so much, Shubham. We really appreciate it. Next up is Jim Harrington, our co-CEO, and he's going to share the 3 Zero Trust principles, talk about a case study, and share RCLICK's keys to success to rolling out Zero Trust, and how we've strategically partnered with Microsoft over the past 25 years, and definitely some of the benefits of that. Thank you again, Shubham, and go ahead, Jim.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Roy. So let's go over these Zero Trust principles here. Shubham, I really appreciate you getting on here. Microsoft's been our longest partnership, going past 25 years. This huge company has really transformed. It's the top security company in our space now, and it makes our job and lives a lot better. I appreciate all your time today. Thank you. But onto these principles. What we want to look at here is this is what the whole Zero Trust platform is about. I'm going to talk about verify first. Now, when I think of verify, what you want to think of is identity, identifying specifically your users, like who they really are. Now, think about the way we've done this in legacy systems. It's a username and password. That's very easily phished nowadays. Like, our users are constantly under attack by fake messages that either look like they're coming from the computer system or maybe some type of supervisor. They'll get a pop-up requesting credential. And if it's just based on a password, then someone else might be able to sign as a user. So how do we really identify them? When we use a modern platform, something like the Microsoft Azure Active Directory, it's going to have better ways of identifying the people. The top way is it's going to enforce the two-factor authentication. So we're going to have an authenticator app on a person's mobile device. There's going to be more than one way of confirming them besides the password. The really strong thing that Azure Active Directory does now, and I'll get into it a little bit more, is called conditional access. And conditional access is huge. And just like the name says, it's basically making sure you satisfy a number of conditions before you are granted login into the system. So the cool thing about Microsoft conditional access is once it's implemented, it's simple for the users. I found out there's always a trade-off with security. If we go too high level on security, we put in too many controls, we make too deep of a stack, it's going to be very confusing for the users, hard to implement, maybe not as reliable. So maybe not everyone understands exactly how the thing works. Or if we use a system like Azure Active Directory, we put in these conditions, they're simple conditions, clear to understand, easy for the users. And the type of conditions I'm talking about are user would log in. They're going to have a multi-factor security. So besides their password, it might pop up on their cell phone, say, oh, is this really you? You say yes. But then what we're going to do is if they're on their same work laptop, we might say, like, after they've authorized this, like, this laptop's trusted. We're not going to force it to pop up a two-factor on their phone every time. Now they're trying to access some data. They're trying to access some important data at the network. What's going to be checked besides just that it's that user? We're going to see some other conditions. Does the computer have all the security updates installed? Does it have our security software? Is it a specific computer, part of the corporate fleet, not their home computer? Are they coming from a certain location? These things are all automatic, and it'll check these things, and it has to pass all these conditions. It's a way for us to pull back some more central control without making it difficult for the users to get in. All they need to use is their main login. In this Azure Active Directory, if they're using Microsoft 365 email, that's their sign-in. It's just their email password, so it's one password. One more thing on this identity that makes it this Zero Trust faster and easier to deploy is it supports single sign-on. And what the single sign-on really does is when we have all these different things to sign into, different cloud apps, people have like, say, Salesforce, they might have a legacy system at their office. Almost all our clients have some type of legacy database system, like an on-prem system. When we're onboarding, we notice from the IT side, there's usually a lot of steps. You create the cloud accounts, you create the local legacy accounts. But instead, when we do this and we turn on single sign-on, there's no more internal accounts. What happens is if you want to access your internal database system, the database is just going to query the Microsoft directory. Hey, is this person? Okay, yes, and you get access. So the top thing here is like, understand who your users are. After you do that, like Shubham already mentioned, you want to go with least privilege access. So, and that kind of goes along with number 3, which is this assume breach. So we're assuming that the attacker, the adversary, is already in on the system, has somehow bypassed our security controls. And when we assume that, like working backwards that way, it makes it a little easier to protect things. Because what we want to think is okay, even while we did all this, maybe the adversary is on the system. And so we want to limit what we call horizontal movement through the computer network. So instead of like the old model where maybe there's a strong perimeter defense, but a soft interior, the defense doesn't matter where the user is, it's strong everywhere. And so maybe an attacker gets on an end user station, is able to actually see the files on that station, is able to maybe read the person's email, but they can't go further than that. We don't want them to then be able to have some type of credential that can push onto other stations. So we always want to work backwards that way. The whole point of these principles, the whole point here is to protect your important data. Now, if you start with your important data, I usually call it the company crown jewel data. You can protect around that because everyone has a limited budget. There's not unlimited security budget. You don't want perfect to be the enemy of like good enough in security. So you're going to start with that. You're going to think, okay, what's like this high level data? How are we going to protect around that? How are we going to limit access? When we think about limiting access, we're going to divide it into a few areas. And that's where there's this right-click approach. We always think of things either, is it based on a user? Is it about a device? Or is it about like the network, the communications? Now, and older IT management, like years ago when we were running IT, things weren't as reliable. There weren't these cloud systems that there are today. There was so much troubleshooting on making sure everything's working, and there was so much manual setup. Well, nowadays, if we have strong device management, there's platforms like Microsoft Intune, there's security platforms that let us do an image, an initial sign-on, and it locks down the user device. So the user device, it makes it much stronger. So if no matter where this thing is located, it's easier to manage, it's easier to see what's going on. On the network side, what we really want to do with your computer network is we want to, the network's all about limiting that horizontal movement, and how you do that is you segment your network. So even at a small network, like even at a smaller office where there's 30, 40 people, we don't want to have an old style where there's a network switch, everybody's plugged in, and wherever you plug in any computer, it can see all the computers. Even if it can, on the network level, see the computers, you have servers and passwords and things that are providing you some security, but you've lost like your network, like your low-level security. What we want to do in this case is we want to set up virtual networks through the switching. What the virtual networks will do is it's going to segment things based on device type. So we might do a phone system network, a PC network, a server network, guest network, and especially like clients that have things like manufacturing and distribution. Some of these manufacturing machines or security systems, they might not be fully trusted. Like we might not actually have much information how it works. So by isolating those on separate networks, it protects like our crown jewel data. So that's really important to segregate it. When we go back to the users is the most important area. Like, our users are all under attack. The big change in cybersecurity in the past 5 years has been an improvement by the big vendors like Microsoft on base level security, on patching, on practices. And what that means is it's hard to get just a straight up virus now. If someone just sends a generic virus, it's probably going to get blocked by having good cyber hygiene, by having these things in place. So all the attackers, they're really turned to phishing and fooling the users. So it's if you have some type of breach, it's typically not because of some type of malware. It's usually because of some user letting somebody in. And so by having that really strong authentication, it makes it a little bit better, like a little harder for the user to get fooled. I've got a case study I want to talk about. There's a lot of good examples for zero trust. This is one of our clients. It's Easy Health. This is an example how the zero trust really moved these guys' business plan along. This was a home healthcare business. We're in a rapid deployment phase. This is a changing area of the market, and they really want to scale fast and grow. But oh boy, their data needs to be very secure. It's HIPAA compliance, has health information on here. What we're able to do with zero trust with Easy Health is the IT at the company was able to focus totally on developing their applications, working on their servers, centralizing all their data in one place. RCLICK was able to handle we really focused on the device and user area. So we're able to send out pre-provisioned laptops into the field all over the country where the nurses are located. When they sign in, it has a strong identification. It's assuming they're in hostile environments. They're going to sign into multiple Wi-Fis. It's okay. Everything is encrypted. It's using Microsoft solution. It's very simple and fast to grow. Enable this company to move really fast. And back to like why we like using Microsoft security. It's really, it's the key, it's the platform, it's the main source of truth when identifying users. This Azure Active Directory is the standard. So we implement Azure Active Directory. That's where you start directing your logins to. And like I said, I want to have like a perfect solution be the enemy of like getting part way. The typical customer implementation, there's many things that have passwords. If we can start reducing those and programming those applications to point to Azure, it's better. I'm showing this slide as an example where Microsoft is a real mass market vendor. They're not pushing these high, complicated, expensive products. These are inexpensive, and it's a great platform and system. A company like us at RCLICK, our job is to identify this product, meet with our clients, understand what they really need, and get it deployed, get it installed. And now what we can do is we can really rely on Microsoft security to give us the alerts and information we need. Here I've got some of our keys to success, like how to do this. You really want to think like this comes down for business. It's like, how can we power the business plan? And then a great part of zero trust is in regards to cybersecurity, helps you move faster. It actually makes things simpler. Usually security throws a wrench in the works. Usually security slows things down. What we really think of here is we really think of performance. We really think of moving things faster, making things simple. So this is what I want to look at when we're implementing this. First off is this identification. Now, identification goes beyond what I talked about identifying the users. We want to start with the data. We want to identify that crown jewel data. We do this by interviewing some key stakeholders at the business. We want to see what's very important, what needs to be protected, how is it set up. Now, part of identifying it is seeing how complicated things are. If I can't talk to someone and completely understand how the business is running, where the data, what's important, something's a little wrong. And if things are too complicated, you bet you're missing something on your security. There's some opening. this is like our big challenge here, is imagine what we have to do. Like now things are spread. There's not a central perimeter security. We have one node that's open that was misconfigured, that wasn't set right. It's like that can cause a problem for the entire system. So what we want to do is we want to assume that's going to happen. We want to assume there's some problems, and we want to like limit the ability for things to spread through there. So starting off with identification, identify the crown jewel data, identify what's important to the business, and then we go and then we start identifying the users. Step 2 is simplification. Simplification is the most cost-effective thing to do. Typically, like businesses have been around a while, have a lot of legacy systems. We might have a lot of separate servers. We might have on-prem, we might have cloud servers. There's usually opportunity to consolidate these things. Sometimes there's hesitance to make some changes on an older system, because some older systems, maybe they're not fully patched. Maybe it's unsure if it'll be easy to make a migration. But on the end of these migrations, it's like simplifying and making it easier. Like it allows us to put the IT spend budget somewhere where it's more effective. When we really want to think about your IT spending budget, the goal of this is to put an effective security system in place. It's not too costly. We're going to limit breaches or things like this, surprises that are extremely costly. We really want to free up this budget so internal IT at your businesses can focus on the important stuff. And what that is really developing your internal line of business applications. Instead of spending budget and time troubleshooting, you're going to spend budget and time with programmers, developers, making things like business intelligence, giving your workers better information, helping them be more productive. So simplifying is like a key to freeing up budget to work on these things. One other thing on simplifying, I would think about, for instance, or just really understanding what's going on. If I look at backup systems, I want this backup system to be simple to understand, and to be immutable. And immutable means like we assume someone can get into the system, but it can't be deleted. I'll get onto that a little bit more. Documentation is the next key. It's like really having clean documentation, understanding what's going on with everything. And then the final one is this monitoring and response. And the monitoring and response, this is the role we're playing. We're playing two big roles. We're helping to help you determine where you're at, like what's needed, what products we need to use. And then RCLICK maintains a security operations center. So we have staff 24/7 that are monitoring the outputs of these systems, of this Microsoft system. And you know what we're getting on outputs now? We're getting less of virus detected. But what we're getting more of is there's some unusual activity there. We see a large file transfer that doesn't normally happen. Like those are type of alerts we're getting. And what we're able to do is we pull things into our security information system and we consolidate it. So instead of having a bunch of separate systems to look at, we're going to look at one central system that's going to say, hey, like the firewall here showed a lot more movement. At the same time, we see changes on the files in this cloud server that hasn't changed very often. To help our engineers respond to something. When we assume breach, we assume some of these things have already happened. But the research has really shown when someone breaches a system, most of the damage doesn't happen until 90 days. Usually, like hacker teams, they operate separately. There's one group that does the phishing, one does an initial breach. They might sell that information to somebody else. It takes time. They're going to investigate. A lot of times what a hacker wants to do is find that crown jewel data. They want to somehow crypto it, release it. They want to ransom the company. If there is some breach, something gets breached, and it's discovered within a day or two, and it's responded to, a lot of times that will really limit and protect the system. So that's called managed detection and response. It's a very important thing to have in place. So we're like a lot of times these things are happening. And if we can, we don't even have to detect it on the spot, but if we can detect and respond later, that's great. And then this checklist, like the way we roll these things out is we talked about this segmentation on the network side, really divide things up with your smart network switch. Now, the other thing on the network is this ZTNA technology. ZTNA is awesome. It's a replacement for your legacy VPN. most companies have a VPN system. VPN systems a lot of times are a nightmare to maintain. A typical VPN, it might be some central servers, either in a cloud or in the office. It's usually a manual setup. It does have some high security. It usually requires some manual setup for the end users. It's confusing. It's a separate system. Doesn't always work right. The other thing about VPN is it typically routes all the network traffic through the VPN. And nowadays, with more people working from home and having high-speed internet, a lot of times the internet connection is faster at home than in the office. When you connect to VPN and a legacy VPN, it's going to route all that traffic through the office. A worker working at home, they might need to access some on-prem files. Usually they're VPNing into Office to get some legacy line of business application, the main application that runs the business. They need access to this database. They're gonna log into VPN to do that. Then probably a lot of their work really isn't on that. A lot of their work is probably email straight to the internet. It's probably accessing some cloud systems, but everything's routing through this VPN. And oh geez, this VPN is a single point of failure. If this crashes, it's like they're gonna lose a lot of productivity, and the IT team's gonna spend a lot of time monitoring it. Either way, you lose a little bit. You either spend a lot of money on a high-end VPN and someone to really watch the thing, or you have some downtime with it. The solution to this is this ZTNA. ZTNA is Zero Trust Network Access. What this does is it's accomplished by having an agent, a ZTNA agent, on every device. This really happens through the network and the device management. This ZTNA agent is lightweight. There's not so much smarts with this. All the smarts are in the cloud. It's not something like VPN where you click and turn it on. It's always on, which is cool. And then the great thing about it is it's easy for the users. There's not like, I'm going to deploy this thing and have you sign into it. It's always on. What it does is it always assumes that there's an adversary or the network's not trusted. So if they want to go into a Wi-Fi at a coffee shop, the Wi-Fi at their house, like it's okay. What the ZTNA is going to do is all traffic's encrypted. If they're using right now, if we're using an application like Microsoft Teams, Teams is encrypting all this traffic, but the ZTNA agent is going to encrypt everything. So if the user is using some legacy application that's not encrypted, it's going to do that. And the great thing about ZTNA is the performance. Since it's cloud-based, there's not a single node or VPN server that the computer logs into. It's signing into a ZTNA cloud that's worldwide. The providers are worldwide. They have thousands of servers that they sign into. So the performance is extremely high. So what do we do when we got ZTNA? Oh, wow. It's a low monthly cost per device, replaces VPN. Now it's a huge thing off of internal IT's plate. It's not a headache anymore. Internal IT can now focus on developing the line of business application, helping everybody be more productive. What's RCLICK's job? We watch the output from ZTNA. The ZTNA cloud will check into us and it'll warn us of unusual things. Hey, someone's trying to connect to ZTNA. It's not one of the company devices. This is unusual. Someone's connecting from a weird location. It'll tell us all those things. It'll go into our central spots. It's really easier for us to monitor. This next point here, the cybersecurity management, this is the monitoring I talked about. So really, it's key to have some type of SOC, which is a security operations center. The SOC is separate from your IT deployment team. It's a team that's monitoring this, because what you really need is, there's so much security data now, you need someone watching it, someone that's going to take it into context, see something unusual, or watching for unusual behavior. And on the user is really based on this Azure Active Directory. I touched on this conditional access. It's giving these conditions, these ways that people can connect into the network and seeing if it's okay. And the cool thing with conditional access is you can set different conditions for different systems. If you have a very high secure system, the user might have to do a few more authorizations to make sure they're in. They might have to have special hardware. They might have to be in a special location. It's nothing based on what the user does. It's all configured in the cloud, which is easier, powers things faster, lets you move quicker. With that all said, I hope this was really helpful to everyone here. I hope everyone understands it's like this zero trust. It's really a framework. It's an idea. It's not a brand new idea. This idea came out in, I think it dates back to around 2004. we got pushed on this so hard with the pandemic. When the pandemic came out, us, like everyone else, hustled and struggled to get everyone working from home. And the security wasn't always that great. And then when the security was in place, it was clunky. It was with these VPNs, and there was troubleshooting, slowness, issues. The big vendors stepped up, like Microsoft stepped up, provided this platform that we need. And now it's like the job is implementing it, making it work with the legacy systems. So I'd like to thank everyone for signing in. I'm going to go ahead and hand back off to Isabel. And if anyone has any questions, we could address them then. Thanks.
Great job, Jim. I was just about to say, we got a couple audience questions. There is one that wasn't answered when you were going over that last slide, so I just want to call attention to it. And that question is, how do we ensure, excuse me, it was a different one. Is there any tech stack needed to roll out Zero Trust, or can it be rolled out directly from the cloud?
Okay, good question. So you do need to have a stack. It's based on, we talked about identity. So that's based on the user, but the device management is the main thing. I'm going to go back and just talk about how we manage computer networks over the years. Years ago, there was so much more troubleshooting. So people would have a lot of technical problems. As things have advanced, there's less troubleshooting, there's less technical problems. And the reason is because when devices are rolled out, they have like device management. So having device management is key, having strong device management. And what that means is you have some type of agent, a management agent on your computer that reports back to the cloud. So if you have this device management, this management agent, it's usually made up of a stack. At RightClick, we have our stack, which includes Microsoft agents, includes security software. It's things that check in centrally for us. So what we're doing is when we're applying security updates, when we're updating applications, we're not clicking into the computer and applying it. We're seeing them centrally. Our system is automatically doing it. And it's just filling us exceptions. Like we get an exception, oh, this didn't update. And so having that strong device management is very important. It's also important to only use company devices. Sometimes someone has maybe they don't have a mobile device, maybe they have a desktop at the office. They want to work from home and use their personal device. It's very much not worth it. It's like having a company device lets us have that condition where we can restrict the network. This is an easy control. If you have all company devices, we put it as control and we just say, you can't access this thing if you're not on these, 75 company devices. And that's it. So that's one control puts in place, and it's huge. So having good device management is big. These are relatively simple to roll out. It starts with the cloud. You get a cloud agent, you roll it to the devices. The next step then is the identity, which is really seeing all the logins you have on different systems and see if we can refer those logins to Microsoft Cloud, and we can get rid of that. And that's part of the simplification. So I hope that answers that question.
I think it does. With that, we are done a little bit earlier than expected. I'll give you back 15 minutes in your day. I would like to thank everyone for joining and our speakers for their time. This is a reminder to check us out online at rclick.com. And for digital copies of the case study and checklist we referenced today, please reach out to Roy, our business development manager. His email is roy@rclick.com to schedule a complimentary cybersecurity audit and zero trust assessment. Have a good rest of your Thursday, everybody. Thank you for joining. Bye.